All right, in tonight's video, we're going to a cooling curve for BHT using the online version of Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel is a spreadsheet program. It's similar to Google Sheets, but Microsoft Excel is generally more robust than Google Sheets. It's a bit more powerful. If you have Microsoft Office on your computer already installed, then you'll have the full version of Excel on your computer. You'd probably want to use that instead of the online version. But the cloud version of Excel has a lot of power as well. So let's jump in. So if you're a Winnipeg School Division student, you have a Microsoft account. So what you want to do is go to onedrive.com and log in with your Winnipeg School Division email address and password. When you log in, you'll see that you have different icons. You'll have a Microsoft Word icon, a Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, which is like Google Drive. If you don't see those things on the top left, you'll see this little menu, the little grid of dots. You can click there and you can say, I want to go to Microsoft Excel. Once you're in Microsoft Excel, you can create a new workbook. I've already got one started, so let me go there. Okay, so here's my workbook. When you first get there, it'll have a generic name at the top here. You can click in there and you can give it a specific name. So I've called mine the cooling curve for BHT. I've already typed in a bunch of temperatures from an experiment that I did. I had a test tube of hot melted BHT, and I put it in a hot water bath, and I measured the temperature both of the water bath and of the BHT as they cooled down together. I measured the temperature every half a minute. So my first column of data is going to be the times. My second is going to be the temperature of the water bath. The third will be the temperature of the BHT. Now, if this is your first time using a spreadsheet, just a quick note, the spreadsheet is divided into columns, which the first 26 of which are just the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, etc. And then it has a whole bunch of rows, which are numbered. So when you click on a cell like I have right here, this is called a cell. This cell's location, it would be reported as C2. So you name the column first and then the row second. So this is B2. The number 0.0 is entered in A3. Those are the cell locations when you're referring to a specific cell on the spreadsheet. So let's go to cell A2 on my spreadsheet. I'm going to type a name for this column of data. This is the time in minutes. Right? Now you notice that my label is a bit too big. It doesn't fit into that space. If you put your cursor in between the A and the B column labels, you can click and drag that to be a little bit wider, or you can just double click in between the A and the B, and it will widen the column perfectly to fit the text that's there. The second column would be the temperature of the water bath. So I'll put water temp. I'll open a bracket. I want to say degrees Celsius. If this were the full version of Excel, we could insert a symbol and we could use the degree symbol. So what I'm going to do is cheat. I've got a website open called symbolsalad.com. It's a nice one to remember or bookmark on your computer. It has a whole bunch of common symbols that you can use as special characters. So down here is the degree symbol. So I'll just click it. It copies it to the clipboard on your computer. And now if I go back to my spreadsheet, I can just do the Control V on my keyboard, and that pastes the degree symbol in. So degrees Celsius is the unit. And again, that's too wide. So if you want to see that, you just double click in between the B and the C, and it will widen the column perfectly. The third column is the BHT temperature. I've already got the degree symbol copied, so I can just do another Control V to paste it. And there is the BHT in degrees Celsius. And one last time, double click between the C and the D, and that column gets widened perfectly to fit the data. Okay, so double click, and it's not working. I'll drag it. There we go. So there is the data entered for the temperatures of the water and the BHT. I've already entered all those numbers. Go to the times. I've already entered a few of them. Remember, we're going up by half minutes. I could just keep typing all of the times, but with a spreadsheet, one simple tool that you could do in a spreadsheet is if you're going up by a regular pattern like you see here, we're going up by half a minute each time. Enter the first two or the first three numbers, highlight them so the computer sees the pattern. Excel now knows we're going up by half a minute. If you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of what I've highlighted, there's a little dark square. If I put my mouse over that square, it turns into a big black cross symbol, a plus sign rather. If I click, I can drag that down. I'll drag it down to the bottom of my data, let go, and it fills in the pattern. So going up by half a minute. Be sure you highlight the first two or three numbers in the pattern. Otherwise, if you just highlight the first cell, for example, and you do that same fill down, it'll just copy what's in that first cell. So what you want to do is first highlight a pattern and then fill down from there. So now I've got my times, my temperatures. Let's make a scatter plot. So what I'll do is I'll highlight with the mouse all of the labels and the numbers that are in my table. So everything's highlighted now. And I'm going to go to Insert menu, and there are different charts here on the online version of Excel. I want the scatter plot. The scatter plot will be a graph of the whatever's in the first column will be the x-axis data, the horizontal axis, and in this case, the two next columns will be both plotted on the y-axis or the vertical axis. So let's click scatter plot. There are different types of scatter plots. Do we want just dots plotted? Do we want dots with a smooth curve, etc.? I'm going to do the dots with the smooth curve. So I clicked, and the Microsoft Excel puts the chart right here in the spreadsheet. In the full version of Excel, you'll have an option of moving the chart to its own sheet so it could fill up your computer screen. I'm going to collapse the menu bar up above, and I'll make the graph just a bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better. So there's my current status of the graph. It's not too bad, but there's some things we can improve on it. If I put my mouse back up on the chart menu up above, the options for customizing the chart come down. For example, the chart title, we can click on this and we can edit the title. If there wasn't a title, we could place it either as a centered or above the chart. Let's edit the title. So this is going to be a cooling curve for VHT. There's a good title. Press OK. Let's go back to the chart menu. If you didn't collapse the ribbon, then these things would all be present when you click the chart menu, and they'd stay visible. The axis titles, I can click there, and I can put a title on the x-axis, the horizontal axis. So let's do that. I'll put it below the axis, and this will be the time. So time in minutes. Do the same thing, chart. Let's go to the axis, this time the vertical axis, and I'm going to choose the rotated title. There are other options, but I'll choose the rotated title, and I'm going to put temperature. I think I still have my degree symbol, so Control V. Nope, it's gone. So let me go back to the symbol page and Control copy, click the degree symbol again. And then now I can Control V, there's my degree symbol. So temperature, degrees Celsius, and OK. So now I've got my axes labeled. I've got the title up above. Because we have more than one set of data, there's two different curves, it's nice that there's a legend at the bottom. We could move that legend, but I'm comfortable with where it is. Now, sometimes you want to manipulate things like the fonts. You want a bigger font than what's shown here. If you go back to the chart menu, you can click on the Format option on the far right-hand side. If you click Format, then on the right here, a menu is going to pop up, and you can change various things. Let's go to the horizontal axis. Click there. Notice you can change the minimum and the maximum values. Right now, it's going from 0 up to 16 minutes, which is perfect. The major unit, in this case, is 2. So just like the major scale on a graduated cylinder, it's going up by 2 units on the x-axis. So 0, 2, 4, 6, etc. We're not showing any minor grid lines, but if we wanted to add grid lines in between the major ones, here we could change from, right now it says 0.4, we could change that to 0.5 or to 1, and then there'd be a minor grid line in between these guys, depending on which value we chose. Tick marks aren't that important. If you were printing the graph very large, you could add tick marks on the axis at different places. The number formats, let's go down the font here. So here's where I can make the font a bit bigger. These are for the numbers on the font, so I'll just make them a little bit bigger to show you what I mean. We can also change the title. So click the title. You can change it right here if you don't like what you put. You can also change its size. It's good to have a title of the axis which is bigger than the font size than the labels themselves. And if you want, you can change the grid lines as well, the lines that you see here on the graph. So there's the horizontal axis, right, that we were playing with. If we go do the similar thing on the vertical axis, we don't really need to start at 0. Our lowest temperature looks to be above 50 degrees, so I can change the minimum value to a 50, and we can change the maximum value to an 80. That looks pretty good. And by default, it automatically made the major unit 5. So looking at the graph, 50, 55, 60, 65, which is nice. We don't have any grid lines for minor grid lines, but if we did, they'd be going up by 1s. We'd have little lines every 1 degree in between those major lines. Scroll down. The font size, we made the x-axis, I think, 12 points. So we'll do the same thing here. The title, I think I made the x-axis 14 points, so I'll do the same thing there, and that looks pretty good. So now I can collapse that. So there's my graph made pretty quickly. I'm ready to put it into a lab report. So I can click on the graph itself, I can right-click, and I can copy it. And on my computer, I've got Microsoft Word open, or perhaps I've got a Google Doc ready to go. I can now just paste Control-V, and there is my graph put into my lab report. If you have a Windows computer, you also have a program called Snipping Tool. The snipping tool lets you take a picture of any portion of your computer screen. So using the snipping tool, you could take a screenshot of just the graph and save that to your computer as an image file if you'd like to do that also. All right, so now I've copied my graph into my lab report. Maybe I also want to indicate on the graph where the freezing point is. So now that I'm actually in Microsoft Word, this is no longer Excel, I can now insert something like let's see, I can insert a shape. I can choose from the shapes an arrow. And now here in Microsoft Word, I can click and I can drag my mouse, and I'm drawing what is essentially a line like we would using a ruler on the plateau of my graph. I could make that line thicker or thinner. I can change its color, etc. But now that I've entered it, you can see that the freezing point, as the BHT cooled, it froze. The freezing point is very close to 70 degrees, maybe 69 or 69.5 degrees Celsius. If you wanted to indicate that right here in Microsoft Word, you would say, I want to insert, and you want to insert a text box. See here, I've got a Microsoft Zoom menu in front of me. So where's my insert text box? Over on the right-hand side. And now I'm going to insert a text box. We want the simple text box. And in here, you can say this is 60, what did we say? 69.5 degrees Celsius. So let me go back and copy that degree symbol one more time. So 69.5 degrees Celsius, freezing point. And now I'll just play with my text box. I can click on the text box and go up to the wrapping. I can say I want it in front of text, so now it's in front of my graph. I can also play with the fill. I don't want it filled. no fill. I don't want any line around the border. So now I've got just basically the word 69.5 degree freezing point, and I can put that over here right above the plateau, or I could put it over by the arrow hitting the y-axis. There's a very nice looking graph formatted nicely for my lab report using the online version of Microsoft Excel and then copied into Microsoft Word, where you could add things like a text box label or an arrow. So I hope that helps. Hope you've learned something to create a graph using Microsoft Excel online.